All right, guys. Hey, welcome back to the Failing Songs podcast. Some kind of got some house cleaning things to go over real quick before we get started. So for the guys coming to the IPRF World Championship match in September, we're kind of running a few things. I've been talking to some of y'all, but we're doing if there is something that you would like to order and me bring to the match that you would like to take back, please. We're starting to take pre-orders. It's got to be legal for you to take back to your country. If you have questions, let me know. But if you would like to do that, shoot me an email. It's mike@phalanx-arms.com. We can try and get you squared away, bring stuff to the match. And then the other thing is we're going to be bringing, it's mainly for the international guys that are coming in. Since I know you're limited on what you can bring, we're going to be bringing a bunch of cleaning equipment. So for guys that want to clean their barrels between days, or if you're doing training coming into it or something like that, thankfully Bortec stepped up and is sending some goodies, and then I'm bringing a bunch of stuff. But we'll have cleaning rods and guide rods and action cleaning kits and solvents and all that stuff. So you'll be covered, and we'll have all that there at the match. So with all that said, we've got Andy Hawkins from Hawkins Precision on today. Andy, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Um, so Andy has graciously donated a set of their ultralight tactical rings for this episode. So Andy, really thank you for that. And so guys, if you want to win a set of the rings, all you got to do is share the link for this show. It's on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Tag Phalanx Arms, tag Hawkins Precision. Tell us what you would put these rings on. Be creative. I'm looking at how much effort you put into this, and I'm gonna pick my favorite answer. So be sure and share it. Get yourself a set of the rings. And kind of like last week, guys. So Hawkins Precision is at everything. They're at expos and they're supporting our matches. I don't think there's a single match that I go to that they don't have something on the prize table. So again, like for these companies that you're seeing that are out doing this, support these guys. They're out. I actually picked up a certificate for a set of rings at the Hunter match this last weekend. So
Oh,
um,
nice.
thank you very much. I got a new build going, so we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But guys, just take notice of the guys that are supporting us and supporting our industry. Um, so Andy, kind of give me a background on like you and how Hawkins Precision came about and turned into what it is now.
Well, it's kind of it's a weird story. I think most businesses start in weird ways. Nobody's like, hey, I'm just gonna go out and start a business and maybe see how that works out, I mean, I guess somebody does, but that wasn't me. I
Okay.
was working at a company that was a medical testing company. We did medical testing for orthopedic devices, and I was running their machine shop, which was more like a tool room than a machine shop. So we were making fixturing for testing.
Okay.
And my employer, they were really cool about letting me just use equipment for whatever I wanted to do. So I was goofing around. I wanted to build my own rifle. So I was, making tooling and stuff to basically to true up an action and chamber a barrel and, kind of getting everything going. I wanted to build a 338 Edge. And it was
Okay.
back in maybe 2010, probably 2009, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Back when bigger meant farther, you could build a big gun and shoot real far. And
Yeah.
so I was truing up an old Remington Sendero. Wasn't old at the time, but to me now it's old. And I had gotten so far I had ordered a barrel and made some tooling to do all the work and made a muzzle brake for the gun. Well, there was this old guy, he passed away recently, but he had some land out by out east of town here that we would go shoot at his house. I've known him since I was a little kid, and he had an engraving business and engraved some barrels for a local gunsmith. Did engrave their name and the caliber on them, He actually did that for quite a few companies, but my cousin was out there shooting and told him that I was making muzzle brakes, even though I'd only made one single muzzle brake at the time. And so I, he told a gunsmith locally, and called me up and said, "Hey, I made a referral for you." And I was like, "Man, I wasn't even thinking about doing this for any commercial reason. I just wanted to build my own gun." And he's like, "Well, he's looking for a local source, so give him a call." The company's Weaver Rifles. Kevin Weaver's his name. And so I gave him a call, and he said, "Hey, how about I just build your gun for you in exchange for a pile of muzzle brakes?" And so I talked to my boss, and he's like, "I don't care, really. Do what you want to do." And so, anyways, then pretty soon I had this expensive custom gun habit and was making muzzle brakes and stuff to help, feed that habit, I guess.
Okay.
And then it kind of grew from there. That's the very beginning of the business. Anything that was needed in the industry. Bottom metals at the time were hard to get. There weren't a lot of options, I guess. There were some really inexpensive options and some really expensive options, and landing somewhere in the middle seemed like a good idea. Try to hold the quality of the expensive options and be priced closer to the inexpensive options. And, that's as far as I thought it out. So, started making bottom metals and, scope rings and stuff like that. So, and my employer at the time, they, kind of encouraged this all along the way and eventually invested in the business. They own half the business now. And, so for a long time, we used their manufacturing capacity to make a lot of products. And then eventually we bought a bunch of equipment from them, or at least Hawkins Precision bought a bunch of equipment from their machine shop. And now here we are, we're a standalone business that does the vast majority of our own manufacturing. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. So okay, so it started with the brakes and then into the bottom metals
and then
and
scope
then
after that.
and then the rings.
Yep.
Okay. And so you moved to a new shop pretty recently, right?
Yeah, we moved about, I don't know, 15 months ago.
How's the new shop?
It's awesome. It's a
Yeah.
lot more square footage. We doubled our square footage, and we have office space, and you can't hear machines buzzing in the background right now while we're talking,
Yeah.
which at the old office was not really possible. So it's going well.
That's all. And where is the new shop?
We're in Colorado Springs. So just you were actually not too far from here. I wish I'd have thought of it, but we could have done this in person or something here.
I was really close to asking you for me to come up there since I was close, and it just didn't work out that I could stay another night. And yeah,
Yeah.
I knew you were close, but it's on my list. I really would like to come up there and see everything and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're about an
But
hour from that range, the Prestige shooting complex. So
dang, man, and that facility was amazing. I had
yeah,
never shot in something like that,
it's
much
pretty
less
cool.
snow like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a pretty rare thing. I think that in some parts of town, like Manitou Springs, got 44 inches of snow, I guess.
my God.
And that's like 25 minutes from where we are right here at the shop. And I don't know, probably had less than 10. And then
Wow.
I live all the way north and east of town, and we had a foot there. And then you probably talked to Rich and Nick while you were at the match or ran into them. And I think Rich said he had over 30 inches at his house. So we had this huge variety of different amounts of snowfall from the north end of town, the south end of town, east side, and the west side of town. And, it's not really any, exact rhyme or reason for what happened, but that was a huge amount of snow for Florence where the match was. Yeah, they don't
Yeah,
get
it
that.
was. I think where we were shooting, I guess somewhere between 18 and 24 inches.
Yeah.
Uh, and so this was only my second hunter match, and the first one was a shit show. We'll get into it a little bit too, but this one, like I feel like I shot pretty good, but finding targets was Dude, I was on the struggle bus, just having a mountainside covered in snow and white placards to find the targets, and then
Oh yeah.
even when you found it, it was just, oh, it's in the snow next to this tree on the cliff over there. And I mean, the references were just, it was hard. It was really hard.
Western matches, I mean, that's one thing about Western matches that makes them so difficult is a lot of times they're in a really natural terrain, I'd say. It's a hillside covered in pinions and junipers with rocks, and your landmarks are like, well, it's next to the pinion tree, which looks like every other pinion tree on the hillside. That is the whole hillside, and
Yeah.
sometimes there's drainages, but there's seven of them, or so it's coming up with your landmarks are tough.
Yeah.
Um, you throw snow into that, and then day one you probably had snow covering everything, and day two you probably had patches of snow, so your placards were probably harder to find because the splotchiness of melted snow and rocks that are shining, and yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. It was different. And then on top of, if you missed, did the snow just ate everything and you couldn't
Yeah,
tell where you were.
it's like shooting into jello.
Yeah.
Just kind of
Yeah.
sucks a little.
It was a blast. They did a good job with the match, but
Yeah,
it was tough.
yeah.
Uh,
I heard it was a huge amount of fun. I didn't go. I'm not really set up for hunter matches yet, so I've
gotcha.
been trying to focus on PRS matches, and Nick and Rich have been shooting hunter matches, and that's been strategy. But it sounds like they did a great job, and to be able to actually still host the match despite having that much snow, that's a tough
Yeah.
tough challenge. When it could easily have been insurmountable. So
Yeah. Oh,
kudos to
I
them.
can only imagine how much work they had to put in a couple days before the match to redo placards and get them out of the snow and move stuff, all that. But
Yeah,
it was funny. So, kind of getting into your stuff. So I talked to Nick last week. So I I had I have a set of your ultralights in a new size on order. But y'all aren't doing them yet. So I grabbed a set of rings to get me by until then, and they did not hold up. And so my first NRL hunter match, dude, and it was a big rush. Everything came in like a few days before the match, so I threw it all together. And dude, my scope slid slid in the rings, and I had them torqued and Loctited. And then the one of the bases, like I stripped the screw heads out trying to get it tight enough, and it still would just wobble. And so my zero was just wrecked the whole match. Uh, and So snagged another set of y'all's rings for this match, and lo and behold, the rifle worked really well. So uh it and that's kind of what I want to get into. I mean, just so y'all's stuff is just it's just so good. It just works. And so I kind of want to get into, I mean, I guess like kind of how, what products y'all offer, because I know you said muzzle brakes and bottom metals and rings, but I kind of want to dive into it a little bit more. But
sure.
for those that don't know, what are the products that y'all offer, and what is it that makes them work all the
Well,
time?
I mean, the simple answer there is I'll start with why they work. We use them, we test them, we shoot them, we shoot matches with them. We take them out, put them on guns that get beat up with repetition, or we put them on lightweight guns that have a lot of recoil, and verify that things work, and come up with good test parameters. If you have like I've got that original 338 Edge, we'll put rings on it and go shoot it. It shoots great. So
Yeah,
it doesn't shoot great with those rings and doesn't hold a zero. I mean, then that's a problem. It's like maybe 10-pound gun. So
I was gonna ask
um,
how what it was. Yeah, that's
yeah,
light for.
Yeah, 10 pounds all scoped up. I mean, it's probably a 7 pound rifle without a scope. Um, but the simple answer is we use them. The very first ultralight tacticals I ever made, I made them right before my first PRS match. I mean, this was like oh, what's this PRS thing, and decided to jump in with both feet and ordered a 5 to 25 attacker and made our first detachable bottom metal. And like I did a whole lot of stuff
Oh
within
wow.
like a couple months leading up to that and made those first rings. Well, I went and shot my first ever club level match, and lo and behold, my zero didn't hold. So I had to make design changes. I had to fix things about the rings. And then, being such a small company, I talked to every customer. I got feedback on everything and anything that was had room for improvement. I've always tried to keep a close um network of people, like um a lot of these gun builders,
Yep.
people we both know that build custom rifles, and they they're selling an expensive product of five to, let's say, $10,000 guns scoped up. And if they don't like something about it, I leave an open line of communication and try not to let my feelings get hurt. If if they say, hey, this could be better, or it could be whatever, we listen, we
Yeah.
ask, right? And we try to get that information. And in the very beginning of the company, almost every package that went out the door got a phone call, follow-up phone call, because why not? How do you like
Yeah.
it? What would you change about it? And, when we were really small, it was easy to make design changes. They happened immediately. So, that's that's how the products got to be as good as they are. Not to say that there's not room for improvement. I mean, there's always room for improvement, because yesterday's awesome is just today's average. And that's how we have to look at everything. So
Yeah.
um just keep plugging away and try to make a better product, and try to make it look like it belongs on a $10,000 gun. And you know yeah, everybody's got to be happy. The end user has to like the price, the dealer has to like their price, and they have to be able to make money, and we as a company have to be profitable and make money. And if we don't have people all along the way who are happy with the result for all the reasons, then we don't do it. So
Yeah.
so is to make sure everybody's happy along the way.
I love it, man. And it honestly, it shows. So I think I have at least one of everything that y'all make. I don't have an over however you say it, Oberndorf
Oh, no,
bottom
Overdorf, yeah.
metal. Yeah, that's the one thing I just don't have any rifles that aren't mag fed. Uh,
Yeah.
but dude, I've used and abused everything. I mean, I had it was a really windy. It's like a little club level match. Yeah, it's probably I don't know a year or so ago, and the rifle was like 19, 20 pounds, something like that, and I had it setting
Yeah.
up on a concrete shooting bench, and a massive gust of wind blew it off, and it landed on the turret of the scope, and it was in one of the one piece mounts, and I was like, well, shit. The 20-pound rifle just fell 3 feet on the scope, and it was perfect. Um,
Really?
oh,
That's
dude,
awesome.
yeah, it blew my mind. Not that I didn't expect it to work, but that's just that's a lot landed on a scope.
A hard fall like that, I mean, it can move all kinds of stuff. So,
Yeah,
anytime you drop your stuff on concrete from any distance with a
yeah,
20-pound gun, you kind of got to thank your lucky stars that if it works still,
yeah,
whether that's, you messed up your scope itself, or somehow your rings moved on your Picatinny rail, or if you have a two-piece, Picatinny rail that bolts to your action, that could slide. I mean, you could have a lot of things go wrong. Um, that when it doesn't, and that's fantastic.
yeah. I mean, it's awesome, and just like similar to you, I shoot a lot of PRS matches, and just through matches and testings, yeah, I've broken so much crap. Uh, and it just yeah, it just shows that y'all put a lot of testing through all this stuff. Uh, so for those that don't know, can you kind of walk us through like the ring offerings that y'all
Yeah.
have?
So we make four different lines of rings. We call a featherweight ring, and it's a direct mount. I mean bolts and pins straight to your receiver. They're extremely light. They're a couple ounces a set, two and a half maybe ounces a set. We offer them in 1 inch and 30 millimeter, low, medium, and high. Currently for uh, Stiller, Lone Peak, Savage, kind of hole spacing. 860 front and rear on a inch 350 diameter receiver. So any of those round receivers that are 860 front and rear. We do a Remington, which is obviously a Remington 700. So it's 860 front and a 605, I think, rear, maybe 610. I can't remember off the top of my head, with a flat bridge. So those will work on a Christensen Arms, Springfield Waypoint, Fierce, I believe, and a Remington 700. And then we just started making Tikas. So a ring for
Okay.
Tika, which is the featherweights are pinned. The hybrids are not for Tikas, not yet, at least I should say.
Okay.
And so those are all 1 inch and 30 millimeter, low, medium, and high. We've talked about making 34 millimeter, but haven't really made that jump yet. But those scope rings are approximately $100 MSRP kind of product. So it's a fully CNC machined, extremely light, solid, robust ring for a pretty good price for a guy who wants to build if you want to build a sheep gun and you're not wanting to shoot it 1,000 yards and you want to throw a Swarovski Z3 on it and, have a 300, 400, 500 yard sheep gun that weighs 6 pounds. It's a great option. So,
Yeah.
or just for Tika or Savage or Remington or, whatever. We're trying to line that out and have a huge variety of products there. So we keep adding SKUs. The Defiance SKU is currently in process. The Tikas are, I think, done at this point in manufacturing. They're being anodized. And so Defiance will be next. If you've got a building a gun on an anti or something like that, that's a good option because they're similar to a Stiller Lone Peak hole spacing, but they just have a 605 on the rear instead of an 860. So it's the same front ring, but a different rear. So that's our featherweight rings. Then we have our long range hybrid rings, which are a lot of the same offerings, but they're action specific because they have 25 MOA built in. They're about 4.5 ounces. They come with a bubble level, but they're a direct mount and pin in most cases. And so not as light, quite a bit more solid. So a little heavier recoil guns, heavier scopes. They're 30 and 34 millimeter. We haven't done a 35. Now that the new Mark IV is out, I don't know if I see a whole lot of reason to do a 35 because if you're running a Mark V on your match gun and you wanted to run a Mark IV in your hunting rifle, I think that's a great combo. And it's 34 and fits in them. They're pretty light. They have 25 MOA built in. So there's a short action and long action variation for Stiller Lone Peak. Zermatt also kind of falls in that category for sure. It's hole spacing, Defiance and Remington and Tika right now. And so you can also buy an offset level cap so you can get your level over your parallax knob or your windage turret if you're depending which hand you shoot with, and have more of a kind of a match gun feel on a lighter weight gun. So that's our featherweights and our long range hybrids. And honestly, I haven't looked at a price sheet for a while, so I don't want to throw the pricing out on the hybrids. But anyways, they're a bit more money, a bit more feature rich, and you can, a little bit bigger, more solid. And then we go into our ultralight tacticals, which is very similar to the long range hybrid in cap design and contact surface and everything, but it's a Picatinny rail mounted ring. And so it goes, we have an 885 height, 1 inch height, 1.25 and a 1.375. So low, medium, high, and extra high. and they're 30 millimeter, 34 millimeter, 35 millimeter, and soon to be 36 millimeter. And so the 36s are going to be pretty limited because really those are going to be for Z comps, and
Yeah.
that they pretty much think that's about the only 36 millimeter scope people are running a lot of. Maybe the Zeiss 36 millimeter, but
Yeah, and the new Tangent 7-35 is a 36.
yeah, but I don't think that's going in ultralight tacticals.
No,
You know,
I
if
don't
somebody
think
puts
so
one of
either.
those in those, I'd be surprised. But
Yeah.
it's the new Collis is a 36 as well, and so maybe that
True.
actually
Yeah.
the 328. So anyways, that's our ultralight tactical line. They come with standard. You have a standard level cap, which is a centered up level cap, kind of low profile, snag proof, which is a standard offering, and then we do an offset level cap, so it's more like our heavy tactical lines for all the match shooters who run them, and like having the level kind of off to the side. That's that option exists also, but they're somewhere in the 4 to 5 ounce range per set. It all depends on what scope diameter and height you get, and
Yeah.
trying to make them as light as possible without compromising any of the strength. And they're very repeatable. For a long time, a lot of match shooters were running those on their match guns before we made heavy tacticals. Back when everybody's PRS gun weighed 14 to 16 pounds. That was a common thing back then. So
Now we've
then,
just added 10 pounds to it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, just what's another 10 pounds, right? So then I want to say in 2016 or 17, I made the first heavy tactical 2-piece rings, and they're a 6-screw ring, so a little bit more surface area. They're thicker around where they clamp the Picatinny rail, and I did a Picatinny rail over the front of the scope belt. So really, at the time, the idea was is if people were shooting team matches and wanted to run a Raptor S or something like that up there, or a silencer co-radius at the time were kind of a common thing. But now the Impact 4000s, if you want to run one of those on a Picatinny rail, you get the diving board up front. But it's removable, so you can take it on or off. But what I found is most people are putting, Hawk Hill dope cards on them, or sometimes send it levels, or a whole host of different stuff that they can put up on that Picatinny rail to make their life easier in a shooting match. And it also makes a really nice handle. You can put your hand on it and put your thumb on that level and peek at it when you need to, but it can assist you in kind of, some of that controlling that recoil pulse in a positional shot. Now that I'd say that 80% of shots in PRS matches are done off of a bag with a, set your gun on a bag on a whatever it is prop, and shoot a target. That really aids in slowing that recoil pulse, so you can see more downrange. So then I want to say in 2018 or 19, I made the 1-piece mounts, heavy tactical 1-piece mounts, which were basically taking the same ring caps from the 2-piece rings and making a 1-piece, 3 clamp, 3 crossbolt base, and make those in 1.27 and 1.5 inch heights, 0 MOA at 20 MOA. And right now we make a 40. They're not as popular. I mean, most people are running 0s and 20 MOA. So at some point we might do away with the 40s. I'm not certain, but right now we still make them. So and we do those all 34, 35, and 36 millimeter. And that's the same with the 2-piece rings. So, but
yeah, and honestly, the heavy tack rings and the 1-piece mounts, I mainly because I shoot a lot of PRS, but those are my favorites. And what you were saying, that running the offset bubble with the diving board out front is just as money. It just works so well for recoil control and everything.
Well, Tate Streeter told me once, he goes, I don't even look at the bubble. He goes, I just put my thumb on it and use it to manage recoil. And I was like, okay, right. I thought about it for a little bit, and I started trying it, and I was like, he's not wrong. That works really good. I mean, I still look at the bubble, but Tate's got phenomenal fundamentals, and probably knows when it's level and when it's not. And so it's yeah, I've been really fortunate. A lot of really good shooters have been using the heavy tactical one piece mounts. Cale Harmon was using one this year when he won the Golden Bullet, or I guess
That's
last year,
awesome.
Golden Bullet, and Austin Orgain won 2 Golden Bullets with them, and Bushman was using the 2-piece heavy tactical 2-piece rings. I couldn't talk him into a 1-piece mount. He wanted 2-piece, match the
I
single
know.
piece rings, which hey, that's what
Yeah.
he likes to do. He's
Yeah.
he can do it right. So we've been pretty fortunate that a lot of people who are really good shooters run them. Ben Gossett, when he won the AG Cup, was running them. He still runs them.
Yeah.
And so it's been really good for knowing that all of the attempts to make them repeatable, if you pull them off and put them on, to always have a good zero, it's really paid off. Ben Gossett told me at one point in time that he had taken his scope off. I don't remember, 3 or 5 times when he got on a plane and put it in a backpack and carried it on his carry-on and got there and put it on and never changed to zero and still won some of those matches. So I was like, man, that's awesome to be able to just fully flat out remove it and make sure everything's clean, show up at the range, lock it in place and go win a match, without
Yeah.
moving zero. It's pretty awesome. So
they've been proven a time or two for sure.
yeah, we get a lot of questions. The nut turns people off, having the nut sticking out of the way, and it's kind of an old, I don't know, maybe archaic design in some ways, but it's so repeatable. I mean, with having heat treated, hardened steel or stainless steel, hardened 416 steel cross bolt and nut that are nitrided, and all the tolerances are right, so everything has good contact, and a steel clamp on the clamp side that you can just take them off 1,000 times and put them on and it works. And the very first ones, we didn't heat treat the nuts because it didn't seem like they needed to, but eventually we started to see some problems with people who were taking them off and on all the time, over and over and over again. And so we just implemented that into the process. Every nut goes to the heat treat process, and they get heat treated and they get nitrided, and it helps. I mean, you can get them wet, you can get them dirty, you can do whatever you want to them, and they're always going to be the same.
Yeah.
So it really helps with the repeatability. So
That's awesome. So I gotta ask, what's your favorite product that?
my favorite product that we make.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's hard to say. I mean, probably the heavy tactical 1-piece mounts are my favorite product.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that to me, I interface with it the most when I'm shooting is with my mount, how I put my hand on it, how I attach things to it.
Yeah.
Look at the bubble level every time I take a shot. I have I would say of all the things on your rifle, that you interact with the most. I mean, as a shooter, your trigger, you squeeze your trigger every time. Your action, every time you run the bolt, you interact with it. So, your scope itself, has interaction, and your scope mount and, your stock where your hand goes. I mean, those are all your kind of your interaction points on your gun. And of all the things that we make, I interact with our scope mounts the most. But as far as like, if you were to change one of those things out on my gun, change my trigger, my action, or my stock, or my scope or my scope mount, I would know immediately. There's some other things I might not notice right away.
Yeah.
But those things are all become so accustomed to them that they're change anything. I switched from a Foundation Exodus a couple of years ago back to a Centurion, and every time I pick up my old Exodus, I feel the difference in the grip, and
Yeah.
just little things like that. You kind of build relationships with those products on your gun. So
Yeah. No, I agree. And for those that may not know, and this is one thing that I think um is maybe overlooked a little bit. Uh, so like before I was familiar with your stuff, I ran spur mounts on a lot of stuff, and spur mounts are great.
Yeah, they make
They're great. But so like I remember when I was building out a rifle on one and bought a spur, and I think it was the Halo X bubble level. Spur was $400 and the level was like $80, and then diving board was like another $60 or something like that. So you're $550 or so into a mountain level, and yours are I just checked, so 343 for the one piece mounts, and it comes with a bubble level and a diving board, and they're freaking rock solid. And so like that for someone, and I mainly point out for people that are looking a freaking rock solid bomb proof type mount, but comes with some things that you may overlook for a real honestly really good price point. So I appreciate the shit out of it because I love them and I have too many of them now, but um it's something that I think people don't may not take into consideration what all actually comes with it when you're buying one of these mounts. So
Yeah, and we did that. I mean, very strategically, or I guess I should say I did that very strategically. At that point, I was kind of making all those decisions myself. But the point was that you're going to buy. If people are going to buy, say 50% of the people want to buy the bubble level separate or the level cap separate, and it comes with 2 standard caps. Then it's like, well, logistically, I have to stock a handful of these that I might not sell, and it just became a stocking logistics nightmare to have all those pieces on hand and know what the demand was going to be, and to just offer people a better package, but better than we could have. I'm not saying better than the competition or anything like that. I mean, everybody has their own strategic reasons for doing the things they do, and most
right,
everybody in our market makes a great product. So, but for us, it made more sense to just say, this is the package. It's going to come with the Picatinny rail. It's going to come with the level cap, and we're going to price it out where we make a strategic amount of profit, and dealer makes a strategic amount of profit, and that's what we do. So if it's more than the competition, it's more than the competition. If it's less than the competition, it's less than the competition. But it is a package that,
yeah,
I think having everything standard is a value add that, well, if I know that we're going to make 100 sets of those, we also need 100 Picatinny rails and 100 level caps, obviously, and 100 standard caps and 300 nuts and 300 clamps, 300 cross bolts. And, that's the batch, right? And it's always the same. It's not a variation, and, it doesn't have to be calculated differently. It kind of, the demand is the demand. And
right,
so I think it produced a really good value for the customer, and it works good for us. It works good for our dealers, and I think it just works good for everybody. And some people take some of those things off and probably sitting on their bench and never get touched, and that's okay, right?
yeah,
Maybe they'll use them later, or maybe they'll pass them off to a friend who lost theirs, or whatever. I hope they're not, too many of them aren't being wasted or not used, but if they are, it's built into the cost, and it makes sense for us to do
yeah.
it that way.
Yeah,
So
no, I love it. And then one of my other favorite that y'all do is the Hunter DBM with y'all's Hunter Max. Uh, I got my first set. Um, I built a 7 PRC last year, and those mags, uh, they're so different than any other mag that I'd ever mess with. So can you kind of tell us how, for those that haven't seen them, what they are, but then kind of also how the heck you came up with that, because it's pretty different.
Well, so I mean, that was kind of it was a long process in the works of trying to figure out how to meet the demand the customer wanted. Our bottom metal market really started out making Oberndorf bottom metals. That was our only bottom metal for a few years. They were Remington, like a Remington BDL kind of footprint, but they didn't sit inside the stock. They sat flush with the bottom of the stock, and a lot of those went on kind of OEM builds, companies that were building rifles that, we're doing package guns or whatever, or custom gun builders who are building a lot of hinged floor plate guns with, high-end stocks, high-end actions, and, just building a kind of a high-end gun. It was an easy fit for us to make those for a lot of those people. Then we started making the M5 detachable box mag system, which our M5, not the M5. There's obviously some other M5s out there, notably Badger, who is another company that makes great products and good people and everything else. But there were some features that some of our customers were asking for. Our very first attempt at that was not very well received. It was a little overpriced, and it's not as aesthetically pleasing, and it didn't have a kind of ambidextrous release. So we made a pretty small amount of those, and then redesigned in 2000 and I want to say 16, 17, somewhere in there. Did a redesign on that bottom metal, and made it an M5 detachable system that had a ambidextrous paddle style release, fit in an M5 inlet, matching what everybody was trying to go with. PT&G, Badger both had M5 inlets at the time. And so trying to hit the standard, and Greg Young at Southern Precision Rifles, bugholes.com. I'm sure a lot of you guys bought barrels and stuff from him, Greg, or several other things. He told me early on in that, he said, whatever you do, don't go out and do your own inlet. That's going to be the death of you if you do that. He was one of the first people to say that. And so I just made sure I bought a Macmillan A5 with a M5 inlet and started making sure that it fit perfectly. And I did the same on the long action and tried to match the pillar heights that Badger had with the resources I had, and make sure the magazine sits in the correct location. And then from there, designed everything to be unique and look different and function different, and try to be our product, not like somebody else's. There's a funny thing. Chad Dixon says it all the time. People who know Chad at LRI said that R&D in our industry is rip off and duplicate. And, the last thing in the world I ever want to do is rip off and duplicate. And so, so here we are, we have this detachable box mag system and this hinged floor plate system that are ours, and they're so totally different products, where you get people who are like, I'd really like to have a magazine that's more like this, for my hunting rifle, rather than my throwing a 10-round AICS magazine into a tactical gun, and carrying it around in the woods. And so it kind of started the process of trying to figure out, how are we going to make this thing look? How are we going to make it function? It started with short action, obviously, because that's the easiest thing to deal with, because it's a single feed, double stack magazine. So I worked on that, made the bottom metal, made it work with an AI magazine with an AI 5-rounder. And I looked at some other 3-round magazine options that were machined. There were some other companies that were doing them. There still are other companies that are doing them. And was trying to find a source for some of those magazines, and was having trouble just getting them right. And so my initial plan was not to even make the magazine. I just wanted to source them. I'm a kind of a stay in my own lane kind of person. I don't have any desire to go out and build custom rifles and compete with my customers, or load ammo and compete with you, or do those things. Continue to do the things that we do as a company, and do it to the best of our ability, and support our customers and support our dealers and stuff like that. So it wasn't really a goal to make a magazine. That was just kind of became a necessity for, I was going to sell a lot of these bottom metals, and I had requests for magazines, and I was struggling to get a supply chain set up for magazines. And so what I decided to do was, and this all happened in a relatively short timeline. I just decided to spend a lot of time designing the magazine that we would want, the feed lip geometry we would want, and try to design it to be solely ours, not a copy of anybody else's. I didn't use anybody else's magazines to to design it. I mean, I did use a 10 round short action AI magazine, and I bent the feed lips exactly the way I would want them to work. And I started with a 6GT, ironically, was the cartridge I started with, because it's kind of like almost needs a spacer kit, but doesn't really need a spacer kit.
Right.
So I figured, if I can make that thing feed, that's going to work. And so I played with feed lip geometry. I spent 100 hours between making magazines and testing magazines, making magazines fail, and redesigning feed lips and how to release a cartridge, so that you push the bolt forward at the right time, the back of the case pops up, and then it goes in the chamber. And so the very first magazines were documented 100 hours or 120 hours or something of feeding, and go back to the drawing board, 3D printing followers and moving spring positions around, and just messing with them, trying to make them all work. And so we ended up with a 4-round standard bolt face, 308 bolt face magazine. We call it a 308 and a 308 Creedmoor magazine. So you can run anything from a 6GT up to a 308 in that magazine. Holds 4 rounds, fits not flush to the bottom of your stock, but maybe it sticks down less than a half an inch. It's a 325 thousandths thick floor plate on the bottom of the magazine. So plus a little bit of wiggle room. So maybe it's less than 3/8 of an inch below the stock. And so that was the first thing. We made that, and we got a 3-round PRC SOM magazine that'll hold a WSM, a PRC, and a SOM. And we started there with just short actions, and that was going really, really well. And then I decided, I'll take the step and try the long actions. I think we made short actions for 6 or 8 months before, and I was really trying to gauge out how fast does one of these magazines wear out. In the very beginning, the first ones I made, I prototyped, I was able to wear them out without anodize on the feed lips, just through repetition. And I beefed them up and made them thicker and took away some of the wear surfaces, and tried to make them try to make it so you couldn't wear them out. And but still in the back of my mind, I was thinking, man, these things are going to be like brake pads or tires on a car. Some point in time, you're just going to have to buy a new mag box and throw your old follower and spring and floor plate on it and do a change, right? That's just what customers were going to have to do at some point in time. And honestly, for a significant amount of time while I was in the testing process, I was really pondering whether I wanted the customer service nightmare of making a magazine, because I didn't know how many people were going to try to run a 22-250, which has so much case taper that it doesn't necessarily function, or, those kinds of things. And how well can we express that these are really very cartridge specific? You can't bend the feed lips.
Right.
Or if you're running belted magnums, maybe you're going to wear out feed lips by having this rim rubbing on them all the time over and over and over again, which belted magnums don't exactly work with their long actions. But and I'll get into that. That's a whole nother topic of discussion. But I at least knew that somebody could buy the short action 100 dBm and buy a competitor's bottom, or not bottom metal, but magazine, and run a 5-round AI or a 5-round polymer magazine from Magpul, or and something like that in there, and still have a functioning gun. And so the short action was an easy decision, and the magazines were more popular than the bottom metal, really. So for every bottom metal that went out the door, 1.5 to 2 magazines went out the door.
Yeah.
And the warranty stuff was pretty low, so we took the plunge and went ahead and made a long action. And so we stuck with the same theme: center feed, double stack below. Nobody's done that to this day with a AI style, AICS kind of style magazine for a long action. I think we're the first ones to do it. And it was a hit. It worked really well with 300 PRCs and 7 PRCs. We make a 284 version, 30-06 version. Initially, the 284 was kind of a 284, 280 Ackley, but there's a little bit of variation there. Some 280 Ackleys didn't work in it, and some did. Definitely a 30-06 or a 270 wouldn't. So we made a 30-06 magazine for the 280 Ackley guys and the 30-06 guys. I mean, really, if you wanted to run a 6.5 Creedmoor with 156s or something like that, and or 708 for 190 grain bullets, you could run it in that magazine in a long action. It would function. I haven't tested that one, the 708, but it's designed with the feed lip geometry that will function for those longer, smaller diameter cartridges.
Gotcha.
So, and then we do a medium too. So the medium action one is for we did it for the Lone Peak medium at first, and then Zermatt's Origin was the second one, and then Defiance changed their XM to they have an XM Plus now, which matches the same hole spacing and magazine location as the Zermatt mediums and the Lone Peak mediums, and then Borden mediums, and Impacts maybe medium, and that all this stuff kind of comes into. So that's more standardized. There's a Stiller medium was actually the first medium, the very first one, to my knowledge.
Okay.
It's the same pattern also. So we made a medium version, and that's been a hit too. So the magazines for that have thus far only been PRC and SOM based cartridges.
Yeah.
So WSM, PRC, and SOM, you can feed any of those three. And those are good too. I mean, for Western hunting, if you don't want a heavy recoil gun, there's nothing wrong with going with a 6.5 PRC with the bright bullet and a medium action, and 3-round magazine that's flush to the bottom of the stock. So
yeah, no, I think there's such a cool system, and then especially on like the short actions, like for some like the NRL Hunter, or like even like the Night Force like Hunter series. If you want to take your hunting rifle, but and then be able to still throw in a 10-round AICS mag. I don't know, it's just super cool.
The mediums also work with the MDT. We matched that MDT magwell. So MDT makes
nice.
a 10-round AICS like medium length magazine that they initially made for Defiance for their XMs. And so that's for people who want to be able to run their hunting rifle but have a 10-round mag and a medium, that's a great option too. So
that's awesome.
So it works with 6.5 PRC, 7 SOM. If you're willing to seat your bullets in a little deeper on 7 PRC, it works there too. But that's obviously a preference thing for a shooter.
Right.
So,
yeah, I was talking to Clayton a few weeks ago, and I will get into this build too, but I was gonna do a 25/7 PRC that they started tinkering with, and that thing is just so freaking cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still want one. I want one. I want to build one to run like open heavy for NRL or something like that, and use it for like a pronghorn hunt or something like that. But I think shooting 135s at the speed limit would be fun.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I'm getting so I have kind of my last hunting, or maybe my last, but my big game, longer range hunting rifle getting built by them. I'm doing a switch lug, and doing a 300 Norma barrel, and then a 7 300 Norma improved, uh, both 26 inch. And I think I'm gonna do like a short 338 Lapua barrel or something like that. I can't wait. But gonna run the hunter. This I love that y'all have the hunter magazines for the the Lapua size stuff.
Yeah. They tend to feed a little bit better in the normal cartridges than the Lapua 338 Lapua cartridges.
Okay.
Just because the way it lets go the cartridge, and it gives you the Lapua case is obviously a little bit longer. So if you run a big heavy bullet, I don't think that the 338 Lapua cases were designed initially for big heavy bullets. I bet they designed them for like 250 grain bullets or something, which is obviously heavy, but it's not like a 300 grain bullet in a 338. Right. Whereas I think the 338 Norma case was designed maybe for a little bit bigger bullet and almost nearly produces the same speeds from my understanding. I don't have one. But
Yeah.
just something that generally, with the way the world has gone with heavy bullets, big cartridges, I designed that Norma magazine to fit with a 300 Norma mag, which also works good with a 338 Norma mag. But sometimes on the Lapua cartridges, the back of the case gets hung up before it's in the chamber. So just as a FYI. So
okay. Well, and at least for
but
this,
I can help you work through that. I mean, there's an easy
yeah.
fix. So
Yeah, and I think running because I have a Thunder Beast 338 Ultra can, and I love that can, but it's big, and
yeah.
so I think I don't know, probably like a 20-inch 338 with that can, and probably run like 250s
Oh yeah.
to keep some speed with it. But I can't wait. I've been wanting that for a hot minute.
Those
But
338s are so much fun too. My first custom gun was a 338 Edge, and throwing 300 grain bullets at what it was funny. I was shooting a 300 Ultra Mag before that, and I was slinging 200s at like 3150 or something. I don't remember exactly. They were fast, and
yeah,
killed some elk and some mule deer with them, and they just hit like a freight train. And then the 338 Edge was becoming a thing, like about that. It was probably already a thing, and I just discovered it myself. And I was like thinking, I want to do a 338 Lapua or 338 Edge. And my cheap nature got a hold of me, and the cost of brass probably dictated the outcome there. And I ended up with a 338 Edge, which is a single shot. And I was throwing 300 grain bullets at like 2750. And I remember thinking, super slow, but man, it has a whole lot more energy. And I started shooting it, and I was like, holy cow, this thing is so much more accurate than my old Remington 300 Ultra Mag. Just at any distance and every distance I ever shot it at was just, I mean, it just put the bullet where I wanted the bullet to go. And at the time, I was so unsophisticated about everything. I was running probably sub $1,000 scope, and just bedded the stock that it came with, and had a nice benchmark barrel, and the action was trued up, and it's just a trued up Remington action, which it's still a phenomenal shooting gun, but wasn't a custom gun. It was to me, but it wasn't like truly like if I was to go build a custom gun today, it's like such a different night and day difference. But I remember being able to break the shot and feeling like that 300 grain bullet at 2750 was so much less recoil than a 200 grain bullet at 3150 or whatever. And still it hit. I mean, I was getting more reliable hits downrange, and seeing more splash, and just like the whole shooting experience was significantly better, for me as a shooter, and it's a pretty heavy recoil gun, but it was slow enough that it was back on target and just in time to watch that bullet impact and know exactly where it went. It was awesome. I remember the first couple of times I stretched it out and watching what a 300 grain bullet does to a piece of steel downrange when it hits. It's like, oh wow, that rigidly mounted IPSC at 1,000 yards, it got it twisted. You'd see it twist, you'd see it take a big chunk of paint off, and you're like, obvious where that bullet hit. And still love those things.
Yeah, so that's kind of one of the things I want to talk about. So I know you kind of tinker with some weird cartridges and stuff like that. Well, I guess what got you into that, and I guess what, because I want to talk
Curiosity.
about this, huh?
Just curiosity. I mean, it's like when I first started shooting, I started shooting, my first PRS match was in 2014. And it seemed like everybody was running a 6.5 Creedmoor or 6.5 by 47, and there were a handful of fast sixes, being 6 by 47s and 6 Creedmoors.
Yeah.
And the old saying back then was 6mm are awesome as long as you don't take them to a match with more than 1,000 rounds on the barrel, because everybody was experiencing this early death in their barrel if they had a 6mm. And whereas your 6.5 would go, people would run them 3,000 rounds before they pull a barrel off. And so there was this inherent thought that, for a very short period in time, that 6mm was just harder on barrels. But all of those 6mm were like, if you were to run a 6.5 PRC in a 2-day PRS match, like maybe you get 1,000 rounds out of the barrel, but at some point in time, you're going to lose velocity as it's shedding, riflings with every shot. And, the fire cracking starts breaking off as it goes. And so they, some point probably in 2016 or 17, 6-dasher became a thing. People started shooting it. Well, what happened was all of a sudden the barrel life like doubled or tripled on a 6mm for, I don't know what, 150 feet a second velocity loss, maybe, or less. Like very small velocity.
Not much. 100.
People were running their dashers at 3,000 feet a second back then too. Which nobody. And yet scores went up, performance went down, scores went up. And I remember thinking to myself, what would happen if you went slower? And I think at some point in time, it might have been John Barry had a, I don't know, top 3 finish with a 6BR. And the world thought, oh my gosh, how did that happen? Did that actually happen? A 6BR, that thing is so slow. And people were running their BRs at like mid 28s back then.
Yep.
With 105 grain bullets, kind of as an average thing. And so running their dashers nearly 3,000 and running their BRs at like 2850. And I remember thinking, man, every time I slow my gun down, it gets easier to shoot. I had gone from a 6.5 Creedmoor to a 6.5 by 47 and it got easier to shoot. And then I went to a BRX and I ran my BRX kind of slow. My first barrel it fouled up really bad for the first while, and it just took a while to break it in. It was a bit of a fouling problem with it. I don't know what it was, but once it broke in somewhere around the 400 or 500 round mark, it was amazing until around 2,200 when I decided I was just going to pull it because I didn't want to risk it any further.
Yeah.
But because it was fouling, and I called the barrel manufacturer and kind of asked the question, they said, sometimes that happens and you just have to keep cleaning and shooting and it'll go away. And sometimes those barrels shoot better, which was their answer. And, once they get past that. And so I just kind of stuck with it and he was 100% correct. That barrel shot amazing, but because it was a fouling thing, and he said, you're right about that 3,000 mark. That's usually when they foul. And so I kept it around 2910 was my velocity on that BRX. And I remember thinking that I'm slower than most of these other guys who are running 6 Creeds and 6 47s and 6 Dashers even at around the 3,000 mark, but the gun's holding great water line at 1,000 yards, and I'm not holding any different wind value than them. We'd compare, hey, what's your 10-mile-an-hour wind? Well, it's the same thing. So a couple of years of running a BRX, and I decided I was going to build a 6BR. I wanted a backup gun, but I didn't want to mix up my brass. And so I did a 6BR, and I started shooting that thing, and it was shooting great. And I was at 2,800 feet a second. It's like, this is phenomenal. Well, actually, before I even really started shooting it, I had to have surgery, and I had a little bit of weight restriction, and a gunsmith that's local to me also, named Shane Harless. He was going to this club level F class match up at a place called Buffalo Creek, and he asked if I wanted to go, and I was like, sure, I'll go give it a shot. Of 600 yards, and I had yet to chronograph that 6BR. I just loaded up 105 grain hybrids at 30 grains of powder and varget and shot it, and obviously it shot like a 6BR. It just piled full, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go. I didn't even measure how much jump I had. I just put them at 2.4 overall length. This was like a conversation Wade Studeville and I had years and years ago about people would just load up a 6BR with 30 grains of varget and 2.4 overall length and a 105 hybrid. They just shoot until they're standing on the podium. They'd just be learning how to shoot. And I was like, man, it really has a good point. And I took it absolutely literally at the time. And the point was, don't change your gear around a whole lot. Find I'll go out now on a little tangent here, but go find a bullet that's won a championship. Being, 110 tips. I run 110 tips right now in my guns. I love them. They are phenomenal. They shoot great. They win championships. Don't ever pick a bullet that doesn't have a golden bullet or a, a F-class championship or something like that. Those, it's a known BC, it's a known drag variability. It's,
Yep.
it works, they just work. And really that could be anything. I mean, it could be like 103 vapor trails hold a world record right now, 1,000-yard bench rest, right? They're an
Yep.
amazing bullet. I would recommend those to anybody. A 110 tip, a 105 hybrid. For 6mm bullets, those are 3 bullets that I think are always going to produce a great result.
Yeah.
Always. But anyways, okay. So back to my other point. So I go to this F-class match, and I never shot F-class before. 600 yards. I hadn't chronographed my gun. I kind of like walked it in. I was probably in the 4 ring or something when I sent my first shot, and kind of walked it in. I was like, man, I really had to dial a lot more elevation than I thought at 600 yards, but I ended up shooting a 594 with 34 X's with that thing. When I got home, I chronographed it, and it was 27-28 was my muzzle velocity. And I remember thinking, how in the world did that happen? Like, we have these arbitrary ideas of what speed you need or require in order to have a successful match. We hear it all the time. A lot of people that we spend a lot of time around, they go, well, if I could push this grain bullet at this velocity, I think I'd be good at this distance. And you're like, well, based on what information? I mean, just because it's been done that way for so long, what's the difference between 2,900 and 2,600 feet a second?
Yeah.
Really, it's a couple percent. It's less than 10%, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to have less than 10% more wind. You're going to have less than 10% more drop. You're going to have less than 10% less energy. It's not, those numbers are not, in my opinion, they're not based on a true reality of what's required. But at the other end of that, when you set your 20-pound gun on a bag on a barricade and you squeeze the trigger and your bullet's in the air for 10% longer, well, guess what? The portion of it where you see the target before the bullet land is at the end of that flight time.
Right.
So all that 10% is added on to that. So you don't get 10% more visualization of what's happening downrange. You get double or triple because you might catch the last 10% of your flight time at 400 yards. Now you get 20%, right? Because you get an additional 10% and you have less recoil generally. So I've built a lot of different 6mm. I've got a 6 Creedmoor. I've got a 6 GT. I've got a BRX. I've got a BR. I've got an ARC, which I absolutely love, the 6 ARC. I think that's a phenomenal cartridge. And then I have a 6 223 Ackley. So I took a 223 case and Ackleyed it and made a 6mm. Took an old take.
That's awesome.
Did that, and I took an old AI magazine and put some sheet metal inside the feed lips and extended them up where I could get the here and get those things to feed, and they're running them 2.7 overall length. I was just filling up cases full of stay ball, mixed head stamp Lake City brass and practicing with it. And they were like 2,700 feet a second with 108 ELDMs.
Dang.
Just pile them up in the same hole all the time. And so I shot that for a little while. This was before I got a 6 ARC. Then I got a 6 ARC and I was like, wow, that thing's out the window now. The 6 ARC is the new thing. And so shot a whole lot of 6 ARC. And then one day I was helping a guy named Ty who works for Kevin Weaver, who was my first customer, get their CNC lathe set up and chambered barrels. And we were doing a 17 Mach 4 and decided, he had dialed in a old takeoff 6mm barrel, dialed it in. And so we put a 17 Mach 4 chamber in it and decided, well, it needs a throat and a neck. And so a 17 Mach 4 is basically a 221 fireball neck down to 17 and some changes in angles. So we ended up with a 6 221 fireball. And then I had a long carbide boring bar and we basically just made it an Ackley. So it's a 6 221 fireball improved that holds 6mm bullets, 103 vapor trails at mag length and a 223 mag. And it's a lot of fun to shoot and, slow, but it's crazy accurate. And I would never shoot a PRS match with it, but I've shot varmints with it and just, it's fun. You know, you can set it on a bag with a suppressor and free recoil it and watch your vapor trail at 1900 feet a second. And the bullet always goes where you want it to inside of some distance. I don't know, but I don't know really what the limit is because generally I shoot it at 13,000 feet in altitude, and you know, there's the DA is probably 20,000 feet when we're doing that.
Right.
But it's always bullets always go where they want, where you want them to. So
That's awesome. And you're doing a 7x47, right?
yeah, we did a 7x47. So you know, that I decided to give that a shot because why not? And it's a lot like the West Texas Ordinance 7 saw, really, I would say. I've not done a 7 saw, and I'm sure I will at some point because now I'm on this same road with 7 millimeters that I went down with 6 millimeters, which is I've got SOMs and PRCs and 7x47 Lapua, and you know, it's I kind of like messing around and see like, well, if you can run that bullet at 3,000 feet a second out of this cartridge, what if you shrink the cartridge down and run the same bullet at maybe 2,800 or something? And the 7x47, I run 175 grain ELDXs at 26, and they're the neck. Actually, I got one right here. Let me grab it. So it puts the bullet, you know, the neck boat tail, or the neck, the boat tail is right at the neck shoulder junction. It fits in a magazine. I can stick 4 of them in one of my 4-round mags, 2,600 feet a second out of a 22-inch proof carbon fiber barrel, and burning less than 40 grains of powder, you get very little recoil. And did I say 2,600 feet a second? So it's a couple hundred feet a second slower than you would run a SOM maybe, or you know. So I hunt with it, and I've got one that's set up for matches, and I shot one club level match with it, and I didn't shoot very well, but it's a crazy accurate gun, probably barrel will last forever. I mean, it'd be like shooting a 308 with a G7 BC, a 350, or you know, if you know, the heavy one's set up for 198 tips, and it's, you know, it's like 2,500 feet a second with a 198 tip, but that's a 422 G7. So it's you know, you got a lot of time to find that trace and follow it.
Oh yeah. And that's what I'm shooting in PRS now is I'm running the 190 burgers at 2510.
Okay.
And yeah, it's
With your
super
saw.
slow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for the hunter, I'm running the 166 A tips at 2700.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah. And it's been so much fun. I've started messing around with the saw hole. I was breaking in, so my PRS barrel is a 28-inch barrel, and I've got it. It's way down to keep it slow, but I pulled some the 150 ELDX that we do a lot for Clayton and them, and dude, it was slinging 150s at like 30-50.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Those little cases are so efficient.
Yeah.
You can do a whole lot with those little cases, you know. And my understanding of how recoil works is it's like your bullet weight and your energy and the powder, the amount of powder you burn goes into your recoil equation, right? I don't know what it is, but if you burn 60 grains of powder to achieve the same thing you did with 30 grains, you may as well add the additional 30 grains on your bullet weight as far as how much recoil you have, how much energy goes out the barrel. It's just not energy you get to keep, you know?
Yeah.
And so by shrinking your cases, you go to a faster burning powder and achieve almost the same thing. You know, it's surprising, you know, and the recoil difference is very noticeable in my opinion. So
Yeah. I think it's super cool. And I like, because I think so the first time I met you, it was at the Raton match, I think 2 years ago, and you were running the 6 arc.
yep.
And
And
I
Marcus was
remember,
there. Yeah, he was running my BRA. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
So
remember I walked up and I was like, "Wait, you're running what?" And you running at like it was like 2600 or 2650,
2670.
2670. Yeah. I was like, man, there, and I'd watch you shoot, and you know those things were just lobbing in there. But I was like, man, it's shooting good. And
Yeah.
talk about just being different. It just it was
And I
cool
was
to
only
see.
one shot away from getting the top 10 at that one.
Yeah,
And it was all mental mistakes too. I mean, I made a bunch of mental mistakes. Austin Bushman tells me one time, he's like, don't shoot the wrong target. And that's what I do. I shot the wrong target. And he gets done. He's, what are you doing? I was like, I'm I'm listening to you, but not the way you meant to. So,
yeah, yeah.
but
But Bushman has a very unique skill set of being able to get in your head with just like a couple of words.
yeah, he's a blast to shoot with. I love shooting with Bushman.
I do too. He's one of my favorite guys to shoot with. Uh, and he just makes it. My favorite saying is his: if it hits left, just aim further right.
Yeah.
He just simplifies everything. But
Well, I mean, I think that's what, most people do when they start shooting competitively is we start figuring out how to break down what we do into a simple, easy to remember process. Um, like if you miss a target and you don't know where the bullet went, what do you do? Well, don't send the same shot. That's the first thing. Don't send the same shot. So you can add a full plate or subtract a full plate, right? You might have a little checklist you go through. It's like, well, do I feel like the wind increased or decreased, or you know,
hmm
I feel like maybe it increased. I'm just going to add a full plate and see what happens. Right.
yep,
So there's just, I don't know. I think that when you get down to like the top 20 or 30 guys in the world, which are, in a lot of cases, the top 20 guys in the PRS are almost on a different level than everybody else. Right.
yep,
And they're all amazing shooters, and they have broken these things down into all these skills they have. And, some of those are just, I know that if I miss, I go through this little checklist, and, like a quarter second after they pull the trigger, they realize that, oh, wow, I needed to do this different. And it's just, they've broken this all down into processes that, they can just follow their process sheet, and it's, you know, but like you said, Bushman says, just if you missed left, just hold more right. Okay. You know, so I'm sure it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the simple version for sure. Yeah.
yep,
So,
yeah. And the what killed. So if you shoot with him a lot, you realize like he is a very genuine guy, but he's gonna talk smack with the best of them.
that's what
And
makes it fun. Right.
yes, and one of my I guess one of my other favorite is just like if someone if like hey what are you gonna start with, or you're like oh I'm gonna start with 6/10, and he'll just be walking by and be like oh there's no way that won't. And I've said that at matches where I don't know people and people will just turn around. What? Man, it good win call.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
Yeah.
But so you hunt quite a bit too, don't you?
Not as much as I'd like to, but I do a little bit. I don't know.
Uh, what do you like to hunt?
Man, I love hunting mule deer.
Yeah,
If I could just hunt mule deer for the rest of my life, that's all I would hunt. Maybe. I don't know.
that's awesome.
Mule deer like animals. I've never hunted aoudads, but I think aoudad hunting would be very similar. Spot and stock, kind of canyon lands, you know, go find a place to glass and find them and go hunt them, anything like that I like doing. So
Yeah,
I like hunting in good weather too. So that's so
yeah.
I kind of hate elk hunting, to be honest. I keep doing it, but I don't like it.
It's man, it's on my bucket list. I want to do a elk hunt so bad. There's a lot of stuff I want, honestly, but uh, I love to hunt. Just saying, I don't do it. I don't get to do it near as much as I would like. Uh, but yeah, I want a mule deer real bad. We just don't have very many
Yeah.
wherever I've hunted. There's little pockets where they're at, but I haven't. And our season here is so short for it. It kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. You mean where there's good mule deer hunting, it's it's hard to duplicate. They're not super skittish, and people generally don't. I mean, they don't generally go out and shoot the little forkhorns and stuff, and people let them be. We don't have seasons on all of our doe seasons are muzzleloader and archery, I believe, private land only. So if you see deer, they're not likely to have been shot at. A lot of times you get a good opportunity to look at them and watch them, and it's kind of at least in a lot of places in Colorado, it's like you're hunting an animal that's not used to being hunted at all, because if they gave out enough tags, we wouldn't have any mule deer left. They're not, I don't think they're naturally skittish enough to.
They're kind of dumb.
Yeah, they might be kind of dumb. Yeah. I don't know. I like hunting animals where you can find them abundantly and look at a lot of animals and spend all your time behind glass, just checking them out in a kind of a natural state. And that's what I like about mule deer, is that most of the time you're looking at animals that don't know they're being watched, and they're not on edge, and they don't have that many natural predators. And so they're kind of just out doing their thing, and you get to watch. When you're out elk hunting and you find elk, half the time they got shot at by somebody and they're running by. You're like, oh, there they went. Unless you're hunting trophy units, and trophy units are hard to get into. And then you do get to see, what elk are like in their natural environment, because there's 10 other people out there with a tag. But that's somehow one of them will mess your hunt up, but they're still, you get to see them in a pretty natural environment.
Yeah, that's cool. It's on my list. I'm gonna try and do some hunting next year. I'm hitting matches pretty hard this year. I think I'm gonna try and maybe cut out a couple of them and try and make a couple hunting trips. But
yeah, I grew up hunting in Colorado, and real fortunate that I got to hunt a lot as a kid. Not a lot, but every year at least. We did an annual hunting trip, and when I went to my first PRS match, it was the Cross Sea Rifleman's Roundup in 2014 up in Wyoming, and it was in June 2014. It was on this huge ranch, and kind of like getting to go hunting in June when the weather's nice, is what it reminded me of, because you're just in these huge, wide open, wild places with targets set up everywhere. And I remember thinking, man, I would take this over a hunting trip any day of the week. There's the worst thing that happens is you miss targets, you're cold or miserable or, any of that. It's just amazing. And now, fast forward 10 years later, I've been doing this now for 10 years, and I'm like, well, I really like hunting too. But
yeah,
I've learned that, just pick the seasons I want to hunt and shoot the matches I want to shoot. And I like shooting matches that are when it's warm and, good shooting conditions. And I don't know, turning into an old man, I guess. If it's snowing, I don't want to go. If it's, same with hunting. If it's snowing outside, I don't want to go hunt. And start a fire and hang out and drink some coffee. I don't know.
Yeah, I get it. The matches have been fun. Like it feels like my competitive side, but something about hunting, I think it's the exact opposite. It's just being by myself and it's quiet.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. That's my happy place.
Well, and I think most people's happy place is anything that they can do where they can get absolutely in the zone for a period of time, where all other things in the world don't matter. Whether that's you go on a hunting trip and you're out in the middle of nowhere and you're out of cell phone reception, and you get to experience what life was like before you had a cell phone ringing all the time, or the distraction of social media or emails or work and, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes at a match, I mean, beep, and you've got 2 solid minutes of there's only one thing on your mind, and that's hitting those targets. And that's I like, and I think it's a lot of the same stuff. It's just a different way of getting it, different dosages. And you shoot a match, you get 20 of those moments for 2 minutes long, where they're literally, I mean, if you thought of anything but shooting, you're going to have a terrible stage.
Yeah.
The weather, the wind, the targets and what you're going through. And there's some prep time in there where you're in the zone too. That I think that stuff's very therapeutic. I think it's therapeutic to go on a wilderness hunt where you don't have cell phone service and you're out dealing with the elements, and it's character building at the least if it's cold and miserable, and
Yeah.
sometimes there's a lot of hard work. After you pull the trigger, you got to get that elk out of the nasty drainage that you shot it in, and I don't know. I think it's all great. I think more people need to do more of all of it.
I agree, man. And on that's yeah, that's the biggest. So that's one of my big reasons, actually, why I even started the company, and why I do stuff like the podcast. Like the more people we can have out shooting and being competent shooters, I think it's good on a lot of levels, but it's just, I think even just on a personal level, you accomplish things and you get to experience things that a lot of the population doesn't get to. And
Yeah. Well, it's a super humbling environment too. I mean, I think everybody who wants to get into competitive shooting, who's afraid to do it because they're afraid that, they're going to go out there and they're going to miss a couple shots and the people around them are going to judge them for it or whatever, I mean, I think we all had that fear getting into this, like, oh man, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to suck, and people are going to think that I'm
right.
That I'm terrible and whatever. What you don't realize is that you're only shooting against you,
And we've all been terrible.
and we've all shot a zero on a stage at some point in time in our life and made a big mental mistake and whatever, and everybody around you just feels for you. They're not like, oh man, look at that guy, he sucks. No,
Right.
oh man, I feel for him. I've been there before. Maybe yesterday, maybe this morning, maybe this afternoon, I'll be there again. But
Yeah.
it is what it is. Everybody wants the best for everybody else, and it's fun. But I think that getting out into competitions is character building, is dealing with packing an elk out of a canyon that maybe you shouldn't have shot it in. That those things they help you to be a better man, a better human, better dad, a better person. You get to get a big old spoon of humility here and there, and some failure and some success, and you get to learn and test yourself, and on top of that, I mean, think about yourself as a shooter, as a hunter, as a gun safety person, pre-competitive shooting and after competitive shooting, right? I don't know any competitive shooter who walks around with a loaded bolt action rifle or skyloads or does a lot of the things that we're kind of taught not to in a match. That's maybe not taboo in the rest of the world, but in a match environment, like, our safety requirements are so much higher than a lot of other environments, right? And so we learn so many what not to do's with, don't skyload. Make sure you can see your target and your reticle and your scope before you close the bolt. Don't break your shooting position as soon as you fire and run your bolt. Keep your head in your gun, right? And there's a lot of awareness you learn and how to figure out if the conditions are changing. If you're out hunting and you don't shoot competitively ever, and you're on an animal that's moving and stopping and moving and stopping, and the wind is changing directions, and you might not know how bad of an idea it is to break that shot until you've been in a situation where just a little bit of wind change has made you miss a target that you were like, that 400-yard 12-inch plate is dead as soon as I squeeze the trigger. And you know what? I've missed those things, right?
Right.
And I've learned that there are conditions that maybe you shouldn't get greedy and shouldn't take that shot. But I didn't know that until I missed steel targets,
Right.
And not to say that I haven't missed some animals in my life too, because I have, and I think everybody has, and we all kind of regret that. We regret those moments where maybe I should have just not taken that shot. Maybe I should have, whatever, but I'm a lot less trigger happy as a competitive shooter than I was pre. I've learned all the situations where maybe it doesn't just boil down to I turn that turret and I put the reticle on fur and squeeze the trigger.
Right.
Now there's a lot more environmentals that go on, and they've always been there, but now I know how much they matter. The first time you shoot a mover and you think I'll just hold front edge. No, that doesn't work. you got to lead it.
Yeah.
You really have to lead it. It's all could be only moving 3 miles an hour, but you still got to lead it 1.25 miles at least, or whatever that is,
Right.
1.5 miles to get that 3 mile an hour mover hold. And anyways, I think that the more people who go out and they just take that step and jump into it, A, it's very addicting, and B, it's expensive, and it's a lot of things about it that are maybe not as positive as just you become a better hunter, a better person, a better, more humble person who tested themselves. And it's like exercise for just a whole bunch of different skills. So
Yeah. I've told this to a decent chunk of people, but yeah, my very first match was Clay's match.
oh
Uh,
yeah, those
yeah,
Western Oklahoma matches are rough.
2021. And I thought I was pretty decent. And I think I finished second to last at that match. And I was like, I got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. There's a huge amount of work to do, and a lot of it's sorting out your gear, sorting out your caliber, your load, the things that don't work. My second match I ever shot was the shoot for the green in 2015. In Western Oklahoma in March. That was kind of the precursor to Clay's match, was the shoot for the green. It was the old Okie match. And the first 5 stages I shot were 1-shot troop lines, 1 shot per target. So you had 5 round troop lines, 1 shot per target, and they would be in front of a bush and on top of a hill, and like these bad shooting positions. Well, being from Colorado, where how much wind did you hold over the weekend? 3/10?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so like being from here, like we don't really get crazy Western Oklahoma wind. We get really nice moderate, you know, 0.5 mil or 3/10, or pretty light wind.
Yeah.
Um, Sending these shots into nowhere. I zeroed 5 stages in a row at that match. And finally, we got onto some stuff where you got to re-engage a target with a backdrop, and I started learning, you know, and I shot better than I thought I would 5 stages into the match, but not as good as I thought I was going to when I was showing up. I thought I was just going to go show everybody how good I was, and guess what?
Yep.
I didn't show anybody anything other than, I'm just a normal guy who hasn't shot enough to be at the top level. Could have the
Right.
best gear in the world, or whatever, but you need those skills. And let's be honest, everybody starts shooting and we just start working out our gear. We start
Yeah.
trying to figure out what caliber suits us, and how fast do I need to send that bullet downrange, and how slow should I send that bullet downrange, and how much weight should my gun weigh, and which optic is best for me, and what's my budget on all that stuff. And it's probably 2 solid years of that. And
Yeah.
then from there, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, okay, now I'm just learning how to shoot. That's it. Just learning how to shoot better, learning how to prep for a stage, or learning how to write out a good dope card. I mean, there's so many skills that people need to learn in order to be a good competitor, but it all crosses over into hunting and problem solving and critical thinking, and just a lot of other good things. So,
Yeah.
and go
Huh?
ahead.
I
Oh, go
say
ahead.
I so agree. Just shooting matches, dude. Since I started shooting matches, hunting has just become so much easier. Um, you know, you see an animal, whatever, distance, and you can start putting a game plan together, and you're used to your heart racing and having to check the environmentals and all this, and then plus when you can hit a 5-inch plate at 500 yards off a barricade under time, hitting a 12-inch vital zone on a deer, whatever distance, seems a lot easier.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. And also you have these scenarios where you're like, there's this thing going on my hunt that I'm not comfortable that I can make that work,
Hmm.
because I've been in a situation where I've failed at shooting a target at, a similar condition, and you kind of learn that, like, that 8 a.m. broadside animal on a hill that you can get a good range on, that's great, right? But 1 o'clock in the afternoon, laying down slightly obstructed with a lot of mirage and wind, maybe isn't a good idea. Or, maybe I need to figure out how to get a better angle on that animal, or an animal that won't stop moving. It moves and stops and moves and stops, or it's out in the middle of some sagebrush where you're ranging it and you're getting like 650 and 850. You're like,
Yeah.
where is he? Right? I don't, some of those situations that I think without having tried to range a target that's on a 6-foot T-post sometime out in the middle of a prairie, you're like, yeah, I have no idea how far that target is. And it took me 20 minutes to walk a bullet into it and realize that that's not a good scenario, right? That, when everything's got a berm behind it and every range is easy to obtain, and, like the NRL hunter stuff. I mean, Dorgan runs a 1-day match too, and he's got these Stegosaurus targets, I think they are, that or Triceratops targets that are on T-posts at like 400 yards. And they're the easiest target in the world to hit, except for you can't get a range on them. You're hitting everything in front of them and behind them. And well, that scenario would not be a good hunting situation, because that animal's going to walk off, or it's going to run off, because you're just
I zeroed a stage this weekend, ranged a target, and got, I think I got the same range like 4 times in a row. It's like I got like 946.
Yeah.
Zeroed it. And I was like, well, shit, this sucks. Walked off, talked to the team in front of me. I was like, hey, what range did you get? Like, oh, it's 750. I was like,
yep, you got the hill behind it.
Yep, that explains it.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you don't learn those things. You don't get to learn those things the easy way. You got to learn them the hard way, but it's better to learn them the hard way on a steel target than on a 350-inch bull out in the wild while you're hunting. Like, well, I'll never see that elk again.
Right.
But knowing to wait until it's somewhere where you can get okay, it's gonna walk right in front of that tree. I'm gonna range that tree, or I'm gonna, kind of learn what you can get a good range on and what you can't get a good range on, and what wind conditions do you want to take a shot in, and how long does that animal need to be static at that distance? Because we've all been in that situation where you send a shot and you're like, I feel like it should have been there already. Oh, there it is, because flight times matter, and just, I don't know, it's a good opportunity to test yourself.
I agree.
I think it creates better gun owners and more ethical hunters, and I think it's a great way for people to just be more cognizant of their surroundings, more cognizant of their conditions, and just to be overall, I don't know, it's a good thing. So everybody should do it.
Yeah. So I love it, man. Well, dude, thank you so much again for
thank you
on. This was awesome. I've been really looking forward to picking your brain. And so guys, if you want to support Andy and Hawkins, pick up some of their stuff. I mean, we've talked about it, but it's truly really, really good products. And to help, we're gonna run 10% off Hawkins on the website for the next week. Just use Hawkins 10 code on the website and pick yourself up something nice. So Andy, sincere thank you. Oh, who do you want to nominate to be on the show next?
John Kyle Truitt. Foundation Stocks.
John Kyle. Okay.
Make a appearance. So
okay. Well, I do have his number, so I will give him a call and tell him that you threw him under the bus.
Tell him I said you're welcome.
Yeah. So, hey, well, thank you again, man, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.